All right, what's up, everybody? How we doing? Hope you guys are having a good day. We are, of course, on 2-minute delay today, unfortunately, because we've got EPTNA coming up. But before that, we're doing a little bit of coaching. So we're going to kick off with some Protoss coaching, guys, with our lovely Treha. And Treha has been playing Bronze to GM vibe style. And wants to really engage in learning some different units and things. So we're going to be really kind of is almost Diamond 3 is Platinum 1. So we're going to kind of, yeah, basically find some cool oops. Oh, that's so funny. The hell? Sorry. I have two keyboards in front of me and I typed a message into Battle.net on the wrong keyboard because I'm a genius. I'm going to give him a call anyway. Point is, we're learning some new builds, new compositions, guys. So let's get straight into the coaching. Yo,
Testing.
Hey, how you doing, mate?
All right, hey, let me get your volume dialed in here.
No worries, you're going to need to turn me up, and I'm going to need to turn you down just a little bit.
I think I have you dialed in.
All right, let me turn you
I can keep talking if you need more.
Test, 1, 2, 3. Test. Do I sound okay?
Sounds perfect, man.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, mate. Can you just give me a test as well?
Testing 1, 2, 3. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Beautiful. Testing
Lovely.
1, 2, 3. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Very nice. Very professional. I like it. Awesome, mate. I'm looking forward to today's
past life.
You're a radio guy, maybe back in the day. Before it got killed. Nah, radio's still alive. Awesome, mate. So today we're going to be doing a whole bunch of different stuff. So I really like those thoughts that you wrote down and stuff. I'm just kind of noting this down. Here we go. Beautiful. I think we are good to go. Hop in chat channel Piggy, Piggy, on NA, and you should see me and about 5 other people hanging out in that chat channel. There we go. Beautiful. Shoot you an invite. Awesome. Okay, so in terms of where you're at, right? The thing is, you've taken this one size fits all build order, and you've done really well with it. You're almost diamond already. So it's definitely something where you've no doubt been overwhelming people with just kind of that overwhelming macro. Your ability to just keep producing units, adding upgrades. I imagine it's usually double forge with that 5 build, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you just kind of overwhelming with Charge Lot, Archon, Immortal, and I guess sometimes you probably transition into other stuff in the later game if you need to.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what I come against. Mostly TERRAN seems to be the one that it matters the most in. So like going more Stalker heavy and maybe a Colossus or two, if they're heavy on the bio and the Widow Mine.
Okie doke, no worries. So this is going to be obviously the whole goal with kind of what we were talking about just in the text before is like we want to engage in kind of both winning and losing games quicker, so that we're more aware of when we have a strong point and utilizing it, and then also just creating a tighter feedback loop. So when we die to things, because we kind of want to make some bad attacks so we can learn why that was bad. We also, that's going to help us understand our opponent's play a bit more, because the way you've been playing is naturally very uninteractive, right? In the first 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever. It's, if they come to you, there's a lot of interaction. Sure, you're defending, but you're not really harassing or attacking them.
It's basically macro simulator with, don't die to things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's quite good because it allows you to really hone in on certain skills. However, with where you are on the ladder, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, it's past time. We start branching out and break out of our comfort zone. And we should expect to drop quite a bit of MMR while we're doing this. But this is good. And I don't think you'll actually drop that much MMR at all if we're focused enough. So in terms of where we want to go, the whole idea, like we said, is as long as we always have attack timings in mind, that'll be good. Harassment, like you said, okay, harass is something you'd like to start trying to do a little bit more. You're not exactly sure how to transition out of it. Well, this is where build orders come in, right? So, for instance, against ZERG, you always need to be aggressive versus ZERG. That is just kind of what you need to do because of the way ZERG production works. If you're not mixing any aggression in, well, okay, that's fine. Just, you better be building a late game army and turtling really hard. Because they can build 1 billion aggressive units at the blink of an eye, or they can build 1 billion drones in the blink of an eye. And if they go really hard in either of those directions and you're just playing middle of the road, obviously you're either going to die to the all-in or fall behind against the greed. So it creates too much variability. The way we keep ZERG honest is by having some set attack timings. And, we could call them harassment, whatever. But, a standard one would be like, okay, you go in with your first 2 adepts and you try to kill some drones. And if they've built plenty of Zerglings or whatever, you just get out of there. That's fine. And then you'll see pros do like an Oracle and then another Oracle, right? And they dive in. And then maybe 6 adepts rock up with the 2 Oracles. Simpler ways of doing that, because those are all very fragile, high micro things, which is why I tell people don't do Oracles versus Zerg. Queens are going to kill them pretty easily. The Zerg doesn't need to do anything special, really, to kill Oracles with Queens. But Oracle micro is rather fancy, as is, I'm going to do two adepts. Because with 2 adepts, quite a bit of micro, not that much potential payoff, unless your opponent's totally undefended. So this is why I like things like a proper glaive adept timing. But even then, I like doing it without the warp prism, not like a pro gamer timing. Why? Warp prism.
It's easier.
It's just easier. If we could just shade a chunk of units across the map, skip the robo, skip the prism. It's like the prism is very useful, sure, but I don't know, if we really want to warp it on the front, just hide a pylon on the edge of the map near their base. That's just easier. It costs us less. We can get a quicker third up behind it and be less committed to the pressure. A charge lot pressure or an Archon drop. These are things where, if your opponent just doesn't have any defense against any of these, they're going to lose 1 billion drones. You might borderline win the game with a pack of adepts or a pack of charge lots or 2 Archons.
I did a 2 base charge lot all in, basically, is something that I had played around with a while ago.
And that one, I'm sure you would have killed quite a lot of people.
I did because I got hit by it too many times. I was like, oh, how does this work?
Which is a good way to think about it. Yeah, try out the something feels unfair, give it a go yourself, and get that deep understanding and respect for it is nice. And even just to charge lot pressure, it could be basically done the same way of glaive adepts, just 4 gateways and a warp prism or just a pylon or whatever. And you just go with 8 zealots. It's just 8 charge zealots hitting it 5 minutes, and you're just like, oh, this guy only had 10 Zerglings and a few queens. Awesome. These zealots start tearing it up. It's great. So that's something with PvZ. PvP is a bit more fragile in the early game. Excuse me. And PvT has its own concerns. Each matchup has its own characteristics. Sorry, one moment.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for here is, I want to try new things. I also don't want to have 3 completely different things that I'm learning simultaneously, because you don't get the luxury of picking, I'm only going to play TERRAN today on the ladder. The ladder has its own mind for what it wants you to do.
Well, I think what's nice is there is a bit of a modular quality, right? So in terms of your opening that you've been doing, good job, Vibe. Thank you for making that the standard and not going for a 2-gate. Because 2-gate's more solid versus Protoss, let's be real. But versus the other 2, what you're doing, all we're going to change is the robo into a different text structure based on the build order. That's the only thing in the first few minutes of the game that changes. And then once the harassment starts, it's we're going to plug different follow-ups in depending on what build order we want to do. But at least that opening phase is similar. But you're absolutely right. We don't want to go too far away. Or what you can do, a cute way of doing it, is actually practicing. If you're just I really want to keep things focused, is just practicing one build order for all 3 matchups, even if it's this is a good build for PvP or PvZ, but we're going to just practice it versus TERRAN and Protoss. And maybe you'll change the composition from the mid game, but everything up to 7 minutes is basically the same, Yeah. Right down to I'm shading adepts in or this or that.
It's the knowing the little tweak that you have to do to just not immediately die in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
some little thing like that, right? Oh,
Yeah,
we've got a
build a
wall
wall.
because it's a Zerg player. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So in terms of things like you've written some nice notes here. You don't want a turtle. You're thinking maybe Oracle, maybe DT, both decent openings, and maybe something around the sentry would be a good idea because you want to learn how to use sentries aggressively, right? You've only really used like one for Guardian Shield or occasionally to defend with force fields, right?
Yeah, mostly scouting, right? You just send a phoenix across the map and see what's up.
Exactly. So I really like Stalker Colossus style, Stalker Sentry Colossus, because it's just such a simple ranged army where you basically a move and you force field, and it's all about where your force fields go. And
Okay.
that's a really good timing attack that kind of you can overlay onto any matchup to a certain extent. Where's it the weakest? I don't know. You could argue in PvP maybe because immortals can be really good, but even then, if they don't have a prism, like force fields can just like get them trapped and stuff. Against a Zerg mass roach, but force fields pretty good if you're fighting in a choke point or you hit a tight timing. Stalkers are still very good versus roaches, even if the sentries and the Colossus don't do much damage to them. They'll wreck Zerglings. So that's actually a really cool style that we can kind of overlay. So basically, just writing a few notes at the very top of your document to follow along, by the way.
Yeah, I have it up on the screen.
Cool. Just practice one matchup, even in other matchups, if you want the simpler practice, right? But the other thing there is, okay, so we could do a pretty good style would be Stalker Sentry Colossus to work on a mid-game force field push, right? Where it's like very timing attack focused. If we were to do that, we could do this just off 2 bases, 4 gas, or we could take a 3rd base, but no gases there, essentially, just to have the idea of like, it's a bit more like, oh, it looks like I'm macroing or this or that. I don't really think we need to worry about those mind games or anything like that. I would say the 2 base timing is probably a little stronger generally, and it's going to give us like a little shorter games with more like, let's hit our timing, focus really on the mega details and the micro engagements.
Is the idea here then kind of more of an all-in and just it either is going to win us the game or not, but we have that feedback right then?
Absolutely. Kind of and this is kind of how we should always start our learning process. Some styles will transition from there better than others, based on how they play out, right? So if we're doing this one with like no blink, for instance, it's like not the best transition, but okay, this guy has a giant ground army, and I've messed up earlier, whatever. Oh, we could add disruptors, right? Which are huge game changers with this sort of army, right? Or we could go, disruptors is probably going to be the normal transition unless they're going air, where it's just blink and lots of stalkers if they're going air. But there are transitions off of it. But the way you want to kind of always think about it is you always want to basically dumb it down when you're first learning it, because we kind of want you to just go like, okay, let's not distract ourselves from like, oh, I messed up this in my transition after. It's like, no. Like, let's put all of our mental energy to like, why was my timing 40 seconds late? And why did I mess up my force field so bad? And that way you've got like a simpler thing. And if we do like a 2 base all in, we can like aim to hit by like 8:30 or something like that, right? Even though it's a pretty expensive army, Colossus, we could hit easily by 8:30. I'm just writing a number down. We can probably do way better than that even, okay? But the idea here is you can have 9-minute games and you can get a whole bunch of those in, and this can work in every matchup as well. So this is actually a cool build order. So that's actually, in terms of one size fits all build that gives us lots of reps and micro practice. Okay, that's cool. But is there any harassment early game off that opening? Like we were looking there at like a robo opening. So if we wanted to, how could we harass? I'm going to get rid of the 3rd base no gases thing, by the way. So we can open with Prism, Spot Overlord if you're playing, say, versus Zerg, right? And we can get like 4 Adepts or 4 Stalkers, right? And just do a light drop just 1 to 2 times, right? So this could be a way of, and this is like the same opening as you're doing at the moment because it's robo first, but the idea here is like, okay, we'll have 2 little short bursts of micro where like, say when we load the prism up at home or fly it across, We send it to the dead space. We don't click it right in. We're doing our macro, and maybe it sits there for a little bit. The whole point here is we're not interrupting your macro rhythm, your macro cycle, your build order. It's okay, cool. I've just finished some tasks. I've got a moment. Jump over to that warp prism. It's on a hotkey, so you double tap that button to jump to it, and then you're like, 30 seconds maximum. Let's go. You drop in that main base. You pick off 3 SCVs. Doesn't seem like a lot. That's fine. He's coming back. Pick up, go out of the base, and you shift click it to fly back through the middle of the map to come in and get ready to go into their natural, because you've already gone in the main, so they're going to be ready for that angle next time, right? So you queue it around the map next to the natural, but you don't queue it in. Once again, it waits in the dead space. We're just macroing. Oh, you know what? Oh, double tap the prism hotkey, drop in the natural, kill 2 SCVs. Oh, he's here. Pick up, fly it out, go back home and join up with our army, and we're moving out with our big push. But we've added in something which, while hitting good macro, is very hard to execute, just because especially if you're not used to it, you're like, ooh, we got to actually add these two little pressure moments with our warp prism in there while hitting our macro perfectly. And it's also going to stress out your opponent and make them make way more mistakes and be way less efficient.
Right. Yep. That's something that I definitely notice with not really doing anything in the early game, is there's not really a skill check on my opponent. So it's giving them a lot of freedom to just do whatever they want. And I might just get hit by something because I didn't get them out of the game early enough. If I could, if they're weak in the early game or something like that.
Yeah, it's one of these things where definitely sometimes you let people get away, and sometimes people aren't even like a greedy player, but it's just because you're not doing anything to them. At a certain point, they just switch gears. They're like, well, this guy's just stood there. I'm going to take 4 bases. Like, there's this thing where, like, if there's not interaction for a few minutes, even the most aggressive player can be like, well, I'm taking 3 bases right now. Right. I'm going double Evo as well. All right, let's go. I'm going double engineering bay, or I'm going triple starport BC or whatever shenanigans it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. We just had a couple of people in my Twitch chat just kind of asking about if we were going to cast the EU finals is usually on at this time. Good point. Maybe in future, guys, I'll keep coaching free, but on this day, since those EU tournaments run so late, and we like watching Raynor and stuff, but just a heads up to the people there. We'll talk to you guys obviously when the coaching's over, guys. Sorry. Continue being ignored.
Sorry, guys.
Mr. Trejo here is more important. So, okay, awesome. So we've kind of got like one style there. Your other note for like what did you write? You wrote like PVZ, like maybe Disruptor ? PVT. There was like a Colossus build you were doing for a little while.
Kind of explain some of my headspace here. Is I want to learn things that are going to carry me forward, and like a great example of this, I used to be a ZERG player, got burned out. That's why I'm even getting coaching in the first place. And a lot of the advice you get at lower level is, build this unit. It's good situationally, but that option doesn't really exist as you get better. And so you get this crutch that's happening that doesn't help you in the future. And so I don't really want to, I want to learn things right, and I want things to scale nicely. And so that's like what I want to figure out disruptors, because disruptors seem really useful and can't get EMP'd.
Hells yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like a really good point you said. Like, you want to scale. So what's like a cool way we could like even something like this build that we're doing? It's like when we get good at it, we can add disruptors and just use one, just use one Colossus. Now that's really hard, managing force fields and Colossus at the same time. That's why I'm saying only do that once you're really good with this army, right? Or
I like that. It gives me a way to dabble in that at some point without having to completely relearn everything.
It's like, and I want you to get good with just the Sentry Stalker Colossus first, because the force fields, there's a lot of skill ceiling on that, right? There's a pretty high skill ceiling on how you use those force fields and how you move your army in so your sentries are in range to then drop the force fields, rather than just moving, trying to cast force fields and having your sentries stuck behind, or just being aware of where your sentries are in their army, getting a feel for their range, placing them so they're not overlapping. And then we could also have this little transition. So if the attack fails or something, right? What are we going to do? So we're basically going to take a third base plus second robo and go heavy disruptor, Stalker and just look for a big, basically a 3-base Stalker disruptor all in, right? Where you're just relying on the balls and that's it. And even if it doesn't work, you'll have great disruptor practice off of that anyway, because you're going to be like, oh, my previous attack got wiped, man. And I'm like so behind, but like, I'm just trying to land the biggest disruptor shots, and disruptors are a great comeback unit. So that kind of flows off that pretty well. So the PVT Colossus build you link from Hearthstone, right? That seems very advanced because that's a super quick third base. And it's kind of like, you know, okay, we get 3 Colossi and we poke around the map. We always want to turn things into a sharp timing attack. So let's actually talk about the process here, because I think you're like, with the way you're thinking about things would be really good.
I agree with you, actually. Right. And this is, once again, coaching. This is one of the reasons I want it, is a lot of the advice you get is you either, here's something that's not helpful in the future, or here's how pro gamers do it. And it's like, okay, that's nice. I'm not a pro gamer. What's something that I can do at my level that then scales?
Yeah, something you can improve at piece by piece, right? Which is what we want, right? We want to be able to put one foot in front of the other. You know, we don't want to have the attitude of, well, I'm not a pro, so I'll never be able to do any of these things. But we also want to have a very realistic understanding of the fact that there's a giant gap between the fantastic, you know, sick reactive execution or something and where you are. So, like a great example, is one-dimensional timing attack. Okay, let's actually put this in a numbered list. So you see where I've written how to progress? Just at the top of the second page.
Yeah, I'm here. I just haven't clicked on anything.
No worries. One-dimensional, all in. Okay. So let's think about the Stalker Sentry idea. Okay, we're doing this as a one-dimensional all in. Okay.
What do you mean by one-dimensional? Can you define that a little bit?
I mean, like, you're not allowed to do the third base. You're not allowed to go to the disruptors. You're just always going Sentry, Stalker, Colossus.
Gotcha.
Same build order. You're not really reacting to anything. You're just committing to this same 2-base push no matter what, right?
All right.
Which is, you've kind of been doing a one-dimensional maxed out Charged Mortal Archon attack in the past to some extent, right? You know,
more or less, yeah. Some really variability, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good to get this. So what are we focusing on with that? Tight build order. You know, how do we check that, right? You benchmark your attack timing, right? You go, oh, I hit 745 with 2 Colossus, 8 Stalkers, 4 Sentries, and a Warp Prism. And I had 8 gateways and no upgrades, 44 probes. You know, like you can get a picture of how well you did, right? So you can benchmark your attack timing, you know, double check your replay for, what do we check? Money floating, supply blocks. Maybe we forgot our Robo Bay. So Colossus, the important unit, wasn't building for 30 seconds, that sort of thing, you know. So that's the first thing, is basically the one-dimensional all in. It takes strategy and reactions out so we can focus on execution, I guess is a simpler way to say this, right?
Yep.
So once we get past that, that's boring in the long term. And it's very good because what does it teach us? It teaches you off the back of that, well, when does your build work, right? When does our build work? When does it not work, right? And that's something which, well, oh, it didn't work this game. Wait, no, I hit a minute late. If I look at the replay and look at what they had for defense a minute earlier, yeah, I think it would have killed that. Okay, so it didn't work because of my execution. Is still a big part of the feedback loop there, right? Or I ran into the siege tanks on the high ground and I didn't have anything to spot it and they killed all my stuff. I should have attacked this other angle instead, or I should have waited and you know, brought my Warp Prism in, or ran my Colossus forward and moved in and focused those tanks down at the start of the fight while zoning out the infantry with force fields, and then I could have done it, right? So okay, so when does our build work? When does it not work? Is something we start to learn there. Now, what about when we start learning reactions on top of that? So actually, even there, even with a one-dimensional all-in, we're still learning how to react to things, right? How to react to enemy aggression, right?
Yeah, so if we hit before we're ready, then how do I get back on track? Right, that sort of
yeah, so how to defend cheese from your opponent, but it's also just like how to handle, you know, all the standard harassment, right?
Yep.
off this build order, right? Because the build order is like, I'm just building to this attack. And it's like, well, you have one Stalker. And it's like, oh, okay, like, come on. There's a standard thing. It's PVT. Like, you need to have let's say 5 gateway units by 4 minutes 30 when a lot of those Widowmine drops or Hellion drops or things could hit us. Like, you know, okay, cool. Let's, we start to learn some things of and how to defend cheese, how to handle the standard harassment, and then, getting back to the build after a reaction. So part of that is like you're learning these little branches of your build. Oh, I've got to remember if I see an early fusion core, I've kind of got to build a few extra Stalkers and Pylons because of that. And that's going to kind of slow down this other thing that I'm getting. Like my Colossus isn't as important straight away because I need to make sure I have like 10 Stalkers ready really early. And maybe I drop a shield battery in each mineral line, right? And you kind of have this little delay in the build order while you're doing that. And then you're like, okay, well, now I'm starting to stack up money again. Time to, start the Colossus, start the gases on the natural, and you're, okay, I'm back on the build, right? We've got plenty of Stalkers. We're in a position. We could just kind of continue getting ready for that same push, right? So this is like, we've got this kind of format now of like, okay, so there's a one-dimensional all-in, and we're learning a lot of things off of that all-in, right? Off of that simple, like, I make this attack no matter what. I'm a baboon, right? What's something else we can learn, actually? Because there's so much you can learn off a simple thing, right? Because like we're already seeing that our opponent is still going to be a black box. They're going to still throw 1,000 different things at us, right? So even though what we're doing might be the same, we're still learning many variations. So what's the final thing here that's really big without us actually changing what we're doing? And that is going to be when to commit. Okay, and that can come in the form of learning to visually just assess a situation, right? So like in this case, like observer out front sees 8 tanks behind a wall. Instantly, we recognize no chance and just wait a screen or 2 back out of vision for them to take their 3rd base.
Gotcha.
We can break them as they move out for that, right? We're kind of waiting for at least half or more of the tanks to are going to unsiege and move out into the open a little bit. And even if they're sieged when we attack, as long as they're out in the open, not behind a big thick wall, we get on those tanks and take them down. Maybe we add charge. We add charge and more zealots, right? Because zealots can charge on top of tanks, right? And they take way less damage from siege tanks because they're light units. 40 damage versus 70 on your Stalkers and Colossus, right? And Zealots are also way cheaper. So we can add charge and more Zealots and prepare for that next stage, right? So suddenly we have a plan there. And obviously we can adapt that, but that's just an example where we're learning to visually assess, okay, no, I can't do it. Or maybe another way is, we're like, oh, this guy's actually all-inning me, we see a giant roach army running towards us, right? Just before we move out, we realize we should actually defend, right?
Yeah.
So we take a 3rd and a 2nd robo and start making, maybe Immortal Disruptor or something like that, right? To counter the roaches. And we already have switched gears to a different attack timing. You always need an attack timing in mind. What do I mean? So in this case, if we're just like, well, I'll just take a 3rd, I'll just sit here, and then you're like there and you're building the most killer army, and it could annihilate their army. Like their first attack just didn't find anything. They're running around with roaches, but they can't really get in because your army's so much better than theirs. And you're like, lol, I've got this in the bag. And then 15 mutas fly into your main. And your army has actually been infinitely better than theirs, and it's a game-winning situation for the last 3 minutes. But because you didn't have an attack timing, you're like, oh, I'll just add a few more disruptors. Or, you know what, I might as well go double forge. Oh, actually, hey, maybe I should get... And, you're kind of like, as things are occurring to you, you're adding all these pieces, which are nice individually, but you're missing the big strategic point, which is you have a game-winning army, and your opponent is literally making a really dangerous tech switch, where once they realized they couldn't break you, they built 20 drones waiting for their spire to finish. They're on 5 bases or something, They're like, I just hope I don't get attacked, because they have no way of defending. But once those mutas are in your mineral lines, they can initiate a base trade. They don't have to fight your army head on, right? And you could lose a situation which you should have won. So the idea here is, even there, we've mapped out we've learned to visually assess and map out this. We switch to a different attack timing. That one's well defined. 3 bases, 4 to 6 disruptor / immortals, whatever we prefer there. Then go. So it's still a big attack. It's just delayed. And just simply through the nature of that, we're basically saying, cool, I'm making sure I beef up my army because I know my army is going to scale really well. Force fields, the more disruptors, the more colossus, the more of that together, that's going to do so well versus, say, like just pure bio or pure roach, right? It's going to ruin it. Yeah.
Are you wanting to put this into the plan for like the short term, or is this kind of more of as I mature with the current build that you're proposing, kind of start being able to react in this way later on, I guess?
Yeah.
Just trying to conceptualize focuses
Absolutely.
and priorities.
Yeah, so and this is like literally a visual assessment. You're moving out for your push and you see like 50 roaches running your way, and you just learn to gauge like, well, this guy actually must have less economy than me because that army is so gigantic and scary. I've got 2 Colossus and a pack of Stalker Sentry, and this is a pretty good army, but that is you just instinctively know I need to like just back off and wait for a bit more units before I fight. So we're going to like go down this different branch. And it's never too early to learn these. I would say you want to be cautious learning these branches early on. Like normally your first 5 or 10, it's like, well, let's just go attack, right? And commit to it. Like I said, monkey mode. And if we run into a giant roach army and die, I don't care, because as long as you check, well, benchmark wise, if I didn't run into that roach army, I would have hit 20 seconds later. I would have had this many units. You're still learning and improving your execution, right? That's got to be the kind of fundamental layer. It's a new build order. You're not used to it. We don't care about these reactions nearly as much, right? That's what comes once the build order is a bit more second nature, which is why we want to be stupidly committing to the push. But as soon as the build becomes a bit more second nature, more of your mental faculties are going to be there. So you're actually looking at your observer ahead of the push and gauging, how should I attack this? Or, holy crap, that's a giant attack that's actually coming for me. We'll swap into this plan B that we've just mapped out. And you can map out as many of these plans as you want for different situations, because there's unlimited scenarios in StarCraft, right? But as long as it kind of makes sense on a fundamental level. So the fundamental analysis of that last example, and you can see me writing it there in the chat. ZERG massed roaches are 40 drones, right? We were committing to a 45 probe attack. Might not sound like a big advantage in terms of economy for you.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, because you're also building a bit of a better army than roaches, aren't you?
Yeah. Farmer's own player, right?
Yeah. So you've committed way more to the long game, right? Than them.
Yeah.
So you need to wait a bit more for it to pay off, right? Whereas if that Zerg's going 66
scale a little bit better over time. You don't want to take the fight until you have to.
Absolutely. And if the Zerg's going 66 drones and a Spire and 2 Evo chambers and an infestation pit, it's a bit of a different story, right? It's like, oh, let's go kill this guy before all that pays off, because they've committed a lot more to the long game. What's funny is that fundamental analysis in game, like I said, we might get that just off seeing, holy shit, that's too many roaches that I just see with my observer. Like, how does he have too many roaches? And you don't know exactly how many drones they have or anything like that. It's just almost like a feeling of, that's too much shit, dude. I got to go defend right now. Like, whoa. But we want to start like linking those things together by watching the replay, right? You always want to go like, how did he have so many roaches? Oh, this guy was on 36 drones only? Holy crap. Oh my God, this was like a giant all-in. I thought I was going for an all-in, but yeah. So I hope this kind of elucidates, I think, kind of like the step-by-step learning process, where we start with like a very committed timing attack that we're kind of just babooning. We're like, I just commit no matter what, and then we're very gradually and steadily learning all these different reactions off of it in terms of like how to change the attack a little bit, when to back off and like have a plan B and that sort of stuff. And then there's like a whole nother layer beyond this, which is of course like, oh, well, I'm actually going to do this off 3 bases because it's just a more solid build order. It's harder to execute. It's going to hit a little later. I need to be like even tighter with my execution and stuff, because there's more chance of like me just missing my timing if I'm a little indecisive, right? But it's going to give me like more chance to add blink and deal with muters or this or that. We want to be very wary of committing to something like that that's a bit more open-ended. In general, it's like we should still have a pretty tight timing attack, but we can be more willing to do like a 3-base timing attack that naturally has a more solid economic foundation to like branch off very hard in different directions if needed.
No, I think that makes sense, and I think it's pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. Right, I'm wanting more specific direction in what I should be doing, today, which I think is what I was lacking before.
I think it makes a big difference because it just gives you that I'm confidently following a direction. I always think about whenever I'm learning a new game, Age of Empires 4 at the moment, and it puts me back in the mindset of not knowing everything about a game, and it's very elucidating because there's moments of just sheer like, what is even happening in this game? I don't know what the fuck is going on, man. It's like, and always the answer. Same thing with learning AoE 2 in the last few months. It's just figuring out like, oh, okay, like I just need to have a bit more like what I start with my plan. I'm like, okay, well, what's my plan? Like, what's my style that I'm going to start with as my basis? Like, what's the sort of economy I'm going for? What's my unit composition? Let's not think about how to counter my opponent until I define what I'm doing. Because then my counters and my reactions are going to be like super tight, right? They're going to be so much better defined and everything. Everything's going to line up so much better. So I really like this, man. Awesome. All right, what are we going to do? So from here, let's just read through the rest of what you wrote for PvP. You're kind of like, oh, maybe you want to play Blinkstalker Disruptor or something like that. But then, how not to die against Mass Charge. So that could be cool, is playing the same sort of style versus Protoss players as well. Might be something we want to do. And really committing to that 2-base push. And the idea there would be that we're getting in before they have Mass Charge Lot. And, picking a fight, hopefully in a choke point or one directionally, without letting them get up a giant army and surround us, where Stalker Disruptor is absolutely hopeless. So I think for that, we've talked about a very, very standard style. It's still one size fits all, but you've got different units you're using. You've got harassment with the prism. I think this might be enough for now. And
I'm leaning towards that as well. I think this is good. It's very different from what I have been doing, but gives me plenty of opportunity to practice it.
Cool. I think we could very quickly branch into slightly different openings in your other matchups and so on as well. But for now, I think this gives us enough to practice. It's such a big departure from where you've been. So yeah, I think this is good. This is good that you have this instinct of I am a 1950s dad. I pick up my baby and throw it in the swimming pool, and I'm like, that's how you learn how to swim, and then, the mum's like screaming as the kid starts drowning, and you're like, oh, this one didn't automatically swim. Damn, now it's traumatized. I'm sometimes not the best coach in terms of slicing things into steps. So I think this is a good point for us to get in a game and actually say, okay, let's take a look at what this build might look like. You're in Minnesota, is it? So I guess Central's closest or West Coast for you?
Central is close. Anything United States is going to be perfectly fine for me.
No worries. We'll go Central. I guess Chicago is I think where the server is. So that's 2 states over, Central. Is it? How's my geography?
Yes. You're asking the wrong person. Geography is
This is why I love doing geography with Americans. You guys are worse than I am.
We have a lot of geography to memorize.
If you're ever watching Rotterdam's channel, I'm sure he will enjoy it if you just ask him if he can name every single American state. He will actually be able to do it off the top of his head, the psychopath. He has an elephant brain for strange facts.
Each their own. I have whole bunch of work-related thing memorized instead. That's kind of how I go.
Yeah, using it for things that'll get you paid is probably a good idea. All right, mate. So we can have an AI in here, but I'm going to make them random, very easy economic focus. Now, the only reason is
so I don't die to a 1-base.
Yeah, and more importantly, just we want to get used to shadow boxing. We want to learn to basically playing against no one. It teaches you to visualize, which is such an important practice skill, because then you can literally finish a game, rewind, see where you screwed up, and you can kind of visualize and just replay. Okay, at this point, right here, I can imagine I'm in that spot again. I'm doing and you kind of moving your hands on your keyboard and mouse as if you're doing it. It's hard to get reps in StarCraft of the same thing because the scenarios are so very, very different. So it's nice to continually work on your ability to visualize, so you can actually kind of simulate practice, and kind of memorize those little adjustments and little chunks without actually having to get in a game and play them out. So we're gonna do your standard opening that you've been working on, and it's so bloody similar. So just do your normal build, and I haven't written out any exact changes for you, so that's fine. I'll write them down underneath the one-size-fits-all build thing in a little bit. Okay, actual build.
So this is actually an interesting question here. I'm just probably going to throw a pylon down somewhere random, but against random is something that I struggle with because I don't really have an idea of where to be placing pylons and things like that.
Okay, cool. So versus Zerg, you'd go for a wall off, and the other two you'd build it in your main, I imagine.
No, my opponent, it's easy. But it feels like whenever I go random, I end up getting exploited by where my wall is, no matter where I put it.
Yeah. Why don't we just wall off your natural every game by default versus random in future? Because you can play that versus TERRAN and Protoss, and obviously, like, it could be a little annoying having it down there, but I would say that should be okay. I'd say there's very few scenarios where that gets you killed, whereas not having the wall up on the natural on time.
Right. I mean, it just hurts against ZERG.
Yeah, there's too much stumbling over your own feet. Like the number of even GMs who just don't put the pylon on the low ground versus random, and I'm like, what are you doing, guys? Like, that's such an awkward thing, because then you're walling off with your second pylon, assuming you remember to do that, and that means you're putting your tech as part of your wall off. You're showing everything to the opponent. It's just weird and awkward. For now, we don't really care. We'll just do a normal game. But versus random, yeah, I think just wall off the natural. And what time do you normally scout, by the way?
I'll do after a gateway as my normal scout.
Perfect. All right, no worries. Let's go. So 3, 2, 1.
Now I have to remember what I was doing.
Guys, a massive thank you. Massive thank you. Beep, beep, boop. Thank you so much for gifting the sub. Saundo with the 14 months. Cam with the 300-bit cheer. Maynard with the 84 months. Cam with the 8 months. Resub, guys. Thank you so much. Don't tell him to de-gauss the monitor and clean the gunk out of the mouse phone. GG. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the love.
My man.
Thank you, the original pod. Much love, mate. So yeah, build order looks good, mate. Just keep on going. I have had my morning coffee run through me, so I'm gonna disappear for 60 seconds, and I'll be back in a moment, mate. Thank you, original pod. Thank you, guys. I gotta pee real quick. 1 sec.
No, I was forgetting something.
Reserve ur content.
Forward, because at this point I think I'm beyond where you wanted me to be. I think that was supposed to be a prism or something. It's on autopilot now.
Sorry for that, mate. We are back now. All right, let's take stock.
Oh, he's back,
of
okay.
Where we are. So you're doing good so far. How's it going, mate?
You're on mute still, by the way.
Sorry, mate. Had Discord muted. My bad. I was unmuting my microphone, and I was like, "Why can't you hear me?" Awesome, mate. Sorry for the little runaway there.
It's fine.
The morning coffee, my lord.
It's a thing.
Awesome. Okay, so far it looks like the build order went pretty well. In terms of overall priorities, you've gone for an early immortal. You don't have many gateway units yet, just 2, a stalker and a sentry. So do you normally build that sentry for an early hallucinate? Is that the idea?
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of it times out nicely to give me an idea of I'll take my 3rd pretty soon, and then after that it's do I put down more gateways or do I invest in tech?
Awesome.
And so that scout kind of determines one versus the other.
Awesome. So this gives us like more of a feel for how your build was, because I didn't actually know the full vibe Protoss build. But this is good. So if we look at your document, actual build adjustments. So if we think about it, you're getting a robo up pretty quick, and we're making an observer first, I think. So we probably don't need a hallucination.
Immortal. It's immortal first, and then observer was what I was. Going for.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean that's what we're going to change first.
That's your deviation. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. So we don't need to bother with the sentry this way, because the observer is just going to get chronoed and give us a scout anyway. So as long as our robo's on time, that'll be great, right? So basically, you always go stalker first, right?
Yep.
Okay, so your gateway is going to go stalker. Well, first of all, let's scrap that, and let's get an adept first. Why?
Right.
Because that can go across the map. It can go across and scout. Now, obviously, if it's a TERRAN, maybe you hang around for a little bit longer, and we wait for the stalker to be halfway done or something like that. Maybe we wait before we shade, 10 seconds. And that's just going to give you just a little bit of an indication of, oh, what could we be looking for with that scout? So, drones on natural, right? Oh, the ZERG has no workers on their natural, and there's 10 Zerglings popping out. Okay. I'm going to build shield batteries on my wall off right now. I'd probably full wall my base, because this looks an awful lot like an all-in. If they've got no drones on their natural, by the time an adept gets across, they're like, what the hell are they doing, right? If they're Terran, it might just be factory on reactor, question mark. Why? What does that mean? So factory on reactor means they could be Hellions coming in pretty early and hard. Or Widow Mines, but Hellions are the more dangerous of the 2 options. It just means that your opponent's going to be able to dart across that map and dive in, so something to be wary of. If it's a Protoss, have they got an expansion, right?
Yep.
Nexus up yet, right? So these are all it's nice, because that's going to give us an extra scout after the probe. It's going to give us a good idea of what's going on, right? So that's will be a good thing. We'll still build a stalker after that, and then we'll build another stalker after that as well. So we can just go 2 times stalker there. So this way we've got 3 gateway units before warp gate's done, and we could do this off just 2 gateways, or we could easily get a 3rd gateway as well. I think we'll get a 3rd gateway, because you're going to go observer first. So you don't have the early immortal, but that's cool, because we've got 3 gateways. So we also want to get a 3rd gateway. So we're going to go 2nd plus 3rd gateway same time. And the thing is, if you think about it, warp gate normally kicks in just before 4 minutes, right? So the idea there would be, and I guess before we even think about that, a robo. So it's basically 1st gateway unit plus warp gate research. And then we're going to drop our robo with our next 100 gas, right? Straight away.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And that robo would go observer, maybe get 1 immortal. I don't know if we even need it, but maybe we'd get an immortal?
Yes.
Question
So the
mark?
one question I have with the opener then is, and maybe you'll get to this, is kind of responses to a 2-gate opener
My man.
from like a Protoss. I guess I don't know how much. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So my response with that is basically pump out immortals as quickly as I can.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I mean, if your adept sees that they don't have an expansion, then you can absolutely do that. Yeah. So basically, like,
Okay, so that
Versus
kind of
Protoss?
situation is more off script, right?
yeah. So
it's just kind of
adept sees no expansion. You can come up with a response to that. So that's like a little branch. Yeah, a little branch. It's
Okay.
like, oh, this guy hasn't expanded by, I don't know, 3 minutes 20 or whatever the
No,
timing is. And then
that's good to know, like what is in scope, what is out of scope of everything.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I don't know what your PvP meta is like at your level, right? So based on what that meta is, you might only be facing one base all ins for like a week or two, and you could kind of almost change your baseline, right? Where you're like, you know what, we could change the build order a little bit, and we could very easily
Cannon rushes, stalker
Yeah.
all-ins, and then something else later in the game is usually what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we can just change your entire opening for a PvP to a 2-gate opening as well, you know, to be safer. That's something that we could do, right? So I'm just going to put that as an option because that's kind of the more standard thing in PvP over time. So that's going to be a harder learning curve, but it'll
Yeah, it's going to be its own
settle up.
discussion, I feel like, right? To understand how that's supposed to work and not just be so far behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's still just think of it this way, because you could actually figure this out on your own with a little bit of tinkering. You just get a second gateway and then you build a nexus.
Sorry, you cut out that. You build a what?
You just build a nexus after the 2 gateways, and then you just try to get back to the normal build. And obviously, your probing's up a little bit later, but you know, you'd just build a few gateway units. Like you'd get out your 4 stalkers, say, and you'd build a shield battery on your natural, and then you're like, you know, you're kind of rock solid from there. You still could go straight into your robo from there and just build forward. It's a little bit of a reordering, but it wouldn't massively change things once you get the early stage done. It would just take a little bit of study of, you know, you could look at a pro game or anything like that. We can learn it down the track. But for now, let's just focus on this one.
Yep.
And
I'm with you.
we can go, you know, make immortals, shield battery on natural, you know, that sort of stuff, right? We can have that as a reaction. For now, let's talk about the more standard one, which hopefully we can pull off pretty much every game versus TERRAN and ZERG. Protoss is going to be the more variable matchup for sure in the early stage. So Observer, Immortal, I'm putting a question mark next to. I'm going to say 2 Colossus. And then we're going to go Warp Prism, right? And the Prism is always kind of like the last piece for us as we're moving out, right?
When does the rubber bay come up then in that?
So that's going to need to be pretty much immediately. So we want to get second and third gateway at the same time, first of all. Now that's going to be Warp Gate. They need to be done by about 4 minutes when Warp Gate's already finished about 350 usually. So we want those second and third gateways, preferably no later than 3:15. We want those started, okay? That's my timer for now. It's pretty fucking rough. We'll add some detail. There'll be something more in line of you're like, oh, I do this, then I do this in my build. We're going to line this up a little bit more for you, right? Robo Bay, maybe we'll just do that with the Observer, right? Observer plus Robo Bay is what we'll even write there, okay? And we could even say Robo Bay plus Observer. Why am I reordering? Just the idea that the Robo Bay goes down first because it takes longer to build than the Observer, right?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how much gas I have at that point in the game. But
so will I. That's exactly what I'm thinking as well. Now you're not building your sentry, so you do save a little bit of gas.
Yeah, that's 100 or 50 gas, I guess, right there.
So you're building an adept first as well. So you've got the 2 stalkers, which is 100
75.
gas. The adept's only 25. So you're spending a little bit less in that regard. You're also not building the immortal. So we're going Colossus a bit quicker, Observer's a little quicker. It's a bit of a reordering. We'll see how it goes. But from there, you can imagine you've got a robo heading towards Colossus production, second and third gateway up. We've got to get the gases on the natural. So maybe at, say, 13 probes on natural, take gases.
Okay. It's pretty standard.
I don't actually know that's the timing. I'll pick that one.
I kind of averaged it to be the approaching mineral line saturation point is where I put that in my head.
Yeah, which is totally fine. And then it's kind of like, oh, we've got our 4 gases going. We stop at 45 workers, right? So cut at 45 probes, 44 probes, we could say, to be more exact, right? And then what do we add? Well, we add 5 gateways, right? Because then we'll be up at 8 gateways.
Okay.
Plus lots of pylons, because whenever we do a gateway explosion, we always build lots of pylons soon after that, right? Because our production is kicking up. Already, once you start Colossus, we can also add a little note there, extra pylons, because each Colossus almost uses up a full pylon, right? So how often do we see even high-level players get supply blocked for a little bit? They chrono the Colossus, then realize that's supply block, and go, fuck, shit.
It's the worst feeling.
Yeah, sometimes I've killed my own probes multiple times. Like, I've been like, quick, kill a probe because I'm just one supply short, you know. And I'm like, this doesn't feel great, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so yeah, and then I mean, we also want to go sentries, right? So basically, well, how do we prioritize sentry production? It's like, well, let's say you want to get force field practice. So we want 7 sentries. Aim for 7 sentries. But Colossus take priority, right? So we want to get them early if possible, but only at the point where they're not cutting into our Colossus production, okay?
Okay, that makes sense. So is that basically going to be our gas sink once we have allocated for the Colossus then? More or less?
Yeah. Basically, after the Colossus is started, and we won't even start Thermal Lance straight away. We'll try to leave that till it be like kind of finishing almost as the fight's starting. Because
really?
getting the sentries out earlier means more time to gather energy, right? If we're warping sentries into a battle is really shit. Like, oh look, it's a single force field you spent 150 resources on. Like, get out of here. You can do it if a fight's dragging on for sure, but it's not efficient. If we want to have at least 100 energy on each sentry, preferably more than that to make them worthwhile. And 7 sentries is a lot, by the way. This is a lot of sentries, but this is good. It's going to give us a chance to have lots of force fields to burn.
4 force fields per sentry? Is that how?
Yeah, I mean, if we have that, that's great. But obviously, it just lines up with.
No, I'm just trying to growing the information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an exact number because it's always a push and pull where it's like, well, you can get all the sentries earlier and each one can have 4 force fields. Awesome. But your Colossus are bloody hitting a minute later, right? Before you actually have the Colossus with the push. So that's kind of the push and pull where we're getting pulled in 2 different directions with that. So we're prioritizing the Colossus and we're saying we'll just get the sentries as the lower priority and hopefully, but get them as early as we can without slowing the Colossus. That's kind of the interaction that we want there.
Makes sense.
Awesome. So this is kind of a nice little run through there. That's going to give us a build up. As soon as we've got the prism on the way, popping out, we move across the map and we go for the push, right?
Gateway question. So then, as we're doing all this other production, I'm assuming if we're warping in sentries, we are using our gateways then. So then it's sentries when we can, stalkers, some balance between those as everything else is going on.
I depend because we've got an observer, we've got a lot of vision, right? So we're going to be a little flexible on this one, right? So if you don't see a cause for alarm, we will basically just have. So we've told you to build 3 gateway units, right?
Yep.
So.
Are we just going to sit on those basically until we have a reason to warp in more?
We'll do one more warp in of stalkers as standard, right? When our 2nd and 3rd gateway finishes. So we should have 1 adept, 5 stalkers.
Okay.
And that's all we have. So basically no more production until sentries, then mass stalker, right?
Okay.
As the kind of final piece is all the stalkers kind of come in last, right? Because they can be added whenever. So you're not really producing out of your gateways nonstop. It's your first one builds 3 gateway units, then you got 3 warp gates ready, you do 1 warp in. Say it's PVT, they're split between our 2 bases. Say it's against a ZERG, if they're not being aggressive, this is overcommitting to units. Against a Protoss player, this is pretty good that we're making actual things to be safe as well. I'd say against the ZERG, it's probably the most unnecessary, but either way, it doesn't really matter too much. We'll just do it as a one-size-fits-all for now. So that way we're going to have, 6 gateway units plus the Observer out and Colossus on the way. Start adding sentries to that when we can without slowing down our Colossus production. And some point you're hitting 7 sentries, your 2nd Colossus is on the way, your Thermal Lance is started, and all you're doing is warping in stalkers and pylons from there and moving across the map.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, I think so. We'll find out.
This build order's a little different so far. So how about we just hop in and just restart?
Yeah,
and let's
sure.
actually try to just get a rep with the different build order, just so we can build the kind of muscle memory a little better. Take a bunch of reps to get it down. So let's hop out there. Let's try again. But now we've got that kind of written build order there, which is awesome. Add a nice, very easy AI. Beautiful. Awesome. All right, so and we are running short on time, so that we'll just have a chance to run through this to like the 6-minute mark, 7-minute mark. As soon as we hit there, we're gonna have to finish up, as that'll already take us slightly over time, but that's okay. The important thing is we want to get a rep of the build order, have the notes ready, and then you can of course practice it more. Each day before you hop on ladder, you could kind of practice it one game like this, 1 or 2 games versus AI for the next few days. Just for a few days. Once you've done it for a few days, you can practice it on the ladder. We don't need to be too cautious with it. It's always good to get out there, and it doesn't matter if we fumble. You always treat your first game, even if it's an unranked game or whatever, it's just practice. It's just cool. Don't care if I win or lose. We're just going to get in there, focus on, hitting my build order, hitting my mechanics, getting the groove, getting some nice force fields off, which is a big goal with this style. And we should be in a good spot.
I'm going to confess I'm only about half paying attention to you at this point.
Good.
I'm not that good at multitasking.
Focus on the game. It was general shit. Anyway, focus on your build order, mate. So just remember, first big change to the build is going to be that we want to go Adept first off the gateway into 2 Stalkers. No worries,
but
mate.
still
Keep it up.
Nexus before Core. And...
Yep. Same opening as always. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Hobo. Hobo.
That's the key.
Thank you, mate. Did we have sound effects playing, guys?
Easy AI, so it's not really going to scout much, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, there's things here.
Love good content.
Watch out! It's gonna get you with ravens. Let's focus on that build order. Keep it up. You're doing real well.
This probably should have gone on the low ground.
Extra probe production? Where's your extra probe production?
Game
So
Does Vibe teach
if we
20
could talk-
pylon 20-second gas?
No, he does not. You are right. It is probe
Oh, thank
start
God.
back up. This is probably where I slack off the most. Probes are up after I think the core, right? Or the pylon. It's
So
one
yeah,
of those
normally
two.
it's you pause on 20 for 20 Nexus,
Yep.
20 Cybercore, and then it's you queue up 1 probe, you take the second gas because it's 21 second gas, you queue 1 more probe, and then 22 second pylon with this build order.
Wow, okay. That is later.
Yeah, so
Okay,
let me just,
sure.
I'll write that in your build adjustment here as well for the start. I'll just kind of say 20
Oh, wow.
Nexus, 20
Yeah,
core,
okay.
pause, yeah, and then it's
Yep.
going to be 21 second gas, 22
22.
second pylon.
Cool.
That'll give you a nice
I
little
will
kickstart.
Fix that.
No worries. That's good. I caught that by actually paying attention for once. All right, you ready?
I appreciate it.
No worries. It doesn't make too big of a difference here. Let's just resume that probe production and get back into it.
I should. Also, the pylon's in the wrong spot, and that's really bugging me now. We should pull him back. So is it normal to chrono boost that Adept then at this point with against Terran?
Yep.
Or
Yeah, against everyone. We can always chrono the first gateway unit just as standard. No
Okay.
worries. So Robo goes down now because you've started your first
yes.
gateway unit. You've got 100 gas. So we go Robo and then we start a Stalker once that's started. And we can rally our
I gotcha.
gateway to the front of our base or something like that. And we can just keep on probing like a badass here and chrono your natural as well. Beautiful. All right, so let's control group your adept, send it across the map just for some perfunctory scouting. We're not going to look at it at all. It's just if you can make a habit of throwing a shade in this game and then cancel the shade and come home with it, basically, just to kind of go through the motion. Focus on the build order, though.
Oh yeah, I'm already kind of like, where am I? I need a gateway here at some point, don't I? No, not.
This is perfect. This is really good. So next up, it's going to be 2 gateways at once. Is the next big change, right?
Yeah,
And
because normally I would actually have it at this point, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But your robo was a little slow in your games. Okay, so you were getting a quicker
Yeah.
second gate, but a slower robo, I believe. So the marker I wrote off the top of my head was 315
315.
for 2 gateway, no later than 315 for our second and third. And check out, you've already got the money for it, so it makes perfect sense, right? You've got 3 probes queued up. You drop 2 gateways, and what are we going to do? We're going to, and then we're going to go.
So I'm about to make another stalker, right? So I guess.
Yeah, it's okay to start that after these gateways start.
Okay.
That's fine, because the important thing is kind of, you've already got a couple gateway units out, so that's okay. We can build that afterwards. If you queue it now, it doesn't really matter too much the ordering, but at pro level, higher level, with most of this sort of build order, which is kind of like very PvT-ish right now, we would usually pause the production, get the 2 gateways, then start that unit. So that's either way. That's a nice way of doing it. And of course, your robo is going to be finishing. So we want to start that observer immediately, right? And then get our robo bay as soon as we got the cash, which will take us a little bit. It's okay to have a little bit of downtime on that robo bay, because your robo is so crisp this game, already finishing just past 3 minutes, looking really good. So when you resume, second and third gateway, get the stalker started, and then we can go observer and robo bay. And we can just chunk the robo and the observer bay together, I think is a nice way to do it. So you need 225 gas to do both of those, just a heads up. So that's all right. We're busy doing other things first. So let's actually go to your build order. I want you to internalize this. So second and third gateway, same time, plus pylon. Okay, so if you go second and third gateway now, you should also build a pylon on your natural, right? Because this is always going to line up with us getting close to that 46 supply block soon. So we're going to go second, third gateway, pylon, get the next stalker, and then we can do that robo stuff, okay?
Lovely.
Whoa, sorry.
What just happened there?
There we go.
Resumed.
I need another probe, I guess, to do that. That could be interesting in the future.
Awesome. And if you want to build an extra pylon ahead of time, that's great. Next thing we want to do here is get your double gas on your natural, because that's almost saturated. So you can see there's lots of things that happen all in quick succession here.
Yeah.
So we'll take those 2 gases. And then as soon as our robo bay is done, of course, we'll go for the Colossus. So yeah, let's get another couple pylons, because you're about to go into Colossus production. So always better to build extra pylons than less. Like if you build like 3 pylons here and then you don't quite have the minerals for the Colossus, that's fine. We're always better to like overbuild pylons a little bit. As long as we don't be getting supply blocked, it's all fine. So let's get our Colossus started. Remember, we don't need range on it for a little bit. That's fine. Let's put our workers on gas on the natural.
All fully saturate, or
yeah, fully saturate them straight away. It's worth pulling off minerals onto those in this case.
Okay.
And we're done probing for this game. Okay, so you've even over probed slightly. You've got a few extra queued up. That's fine. It does not matter. What next? Your gateways are done. 3 stalker warp in. Remember. So we get that 1/3 stalker warp in. Bring your adept home as well. Like you can just kind of grab your whole army together. Your observer should be going across the map immediately, so it should have already been rallied to the front to see, hey, what's happening? And what else are we doing, mate? Well, you're making more pylons. Why? Because you've got to queue another Colossus, so another 3 pylons here. Yeah, you see, you just built 2 when you had 1,000 minerals. If you got 1,000 minerals and you're almost supply block, you build like 5 pylons at once, no worries. So get the second Colossus and the Viagra upgrade, the extended thermal lance, as we call it. If you want, we can go sentries first, but we'll just get that now to make sure we don't forget it. So, what's next? 5 gateways. Now, you don't have any more probe production, which is awesome. It's nice and relaxing. So we want to go 5 gateways. Now, notice you're building it behind your main. Waste of time. Try to build them in nice, tight grids wherever possible. See how these are haphazardly placed?
So, like,
if you can build it in a nice, tight grid, and this is why your pylons are kind of poorly placed on the edges, we should have had 1 pylon in the middle, and then we could have fit like 14 gateways on 1 pylon. Would have been really nice, right? So it just makes things easier.
That's habit. There's just this internal resistance to like Arctosis pylons, basically, is what.
And yet you should always do them, and then you reinforce them later on with tasteless pylons. Anyway, sentries. You've got 600 gas. We need to get those 7 sentries going. So Beautiful. And you just built a lot of gateways, so we can build a lot of pylons as well as our warp prism. Because it's almost time to go, dude.
That's it.
Chrono that warp prism.
Oh.
So we want 4 more sentries, and then we're going to go for nothing but stalkers, okay? And remember, once you're pushing across the map, it's totally good for us to have extra supply freeze. This is great. As soon as that warp prism's out, we're going to move across the map. Army on one key, prism on another key. You don't need your sentries on a different key to your army because they're a combat spellcaster. Combat spellcasters you always keep with your army.
Oh, that is my observer key. That's not good.
No worries. Awesome. Yep. Move across to your staging zone. So you should move to maybe just, somewhere outside their base, depending on where their base is at this point in time.
Oh, that's a thing.
And you should be sieging up that prism and warping in stalkers already, because otherwise you're not going to be able to. Yeah.
So the idea is to warp in from as I'm moving across the map. So
and it's okay to warp in one at home and run them across. That's fine. But notice you set up your warp prism on the right while your army's coming from the left. So that's a thing.
Don't do that.
And I said we wanted to hit before 8:30. Well, look at how beautiful this 2-base version of the build is. We're going to hit by 7:30. So beautiful. I'm going to totally change the timing that we have in there. Attack timing 7:30. And you can practice your shadow boxing, mate. Show us some force fields. Imagine you're poking in, fighting.
So what is the correct? I really have never used force fields. What is the correct way of doing that?
Well, basically, do you have rapid fire set up?
Yep.
Do we have that on the force field key? Because we actually don't want to use that because of exactly what you just did.
Because it wastes them.
It's so overlapped, right?
So it is on the key, but I can press it and not use it, right? Like I get that option.
You can, yeah. So you could do it the pro gamer way, where it's just F click, F click, F click, which I think is what you just did. What's the actual button for you?
On grid, so Z.
Z. So Z or Z, as we say in Australia with our King's English. So you're gonna Z click, Z click, Z click, right? Now the thing is, if you didn't have rapid fire on, you could actually hold down Z and just click, click, click. Yeah. And there's like a toggle that's built in on every spell. But because you've got rapid fire, of course, the rapid fire will toggle, which means you can't use that.
Unfortunately, with the grid layout, I don't get a choice.
You would need to customize your hotkey a little bit, and that's totally fine. I and most pros will go button click, button click, button click. So this is technically the best way of doing it, or one of the best anyway. Pros don't use that toggle I was talking about. So basically, you might move in here. So you might go A move, and then as the bio comes at you, you'll right click your army back. And then you'll force field in the choke point to try and split his army, and then quickly A move again.
And then,
you'll maybe even A move before doing the force fields. One of the other,
So the idea is bait him forward and trap him.
Yeah, and notice how that's a choke point, right? So you'd be out in the open, all spread out, all firing in a big arc. Your units would naturally spread out, whereas he'd be stuck in the choke. So if you push in deeper, you start to identify areas where those force fields. So the ramp is a juicy one, or on the edges of the command center, like between the gas and the command center, between the minerals and the command center. So if he pulls back behind, that last one, not the one between the two gases that you did, not so good.
Yeah, not so useful.
But the other one, so if they pull back, right, and then you'll see pros in this scenario lift their command center, and they'll try to come down the ramp and with a big spread behind the minerals and everything at the same time. But you get up in between the hatcheries. You're looking for these choke points, and what you're looking not to just hold the army back. It's just to split their army, right? It's just to stop them all getting on top of you. And it's actually advisable to even leave a little hole in it sometimes, depending on the choke. You're like, oh yeah, filter through into me, sure, And as long as everything else is A-moving, that's the thing. So you just want to be wary of where your sentries are in your army, right? Sometimes they're all stuck at the back, and someone just A-moves and is like, force field, and they're like, why isn't it casting? And this is something you learn with every spellcaster, is just to always be aware of where your spellcasters are. Very rarely do you actually need to control click them and move them around in your army. It's just you might, like I said, move the whole ball a bit further into range than you might otherwise, just to make sure the sentries are there. Then drop the force fields, and then you can do your A move, that sort of thing, right? So it's just if you A move too early, then that's going to be an issue. Is it a zebra or a zebra? Do you guys say zebra in America?
Yeah, I am now completely. Are you talking about the horse-like animal?
Yeah, we call it a zebra.
Yeah, zebra.
Yeah, it's a zebra.
R-E.
Yeah,
That's
you
fine.
go.
Works for me.
I like that someone Drew in chat tried to argue that it's the other way because he's like, well, what do you call a zebra? I'm like, we call it a zebra, you idiots.
There are so many other things to debate. I don't really care about pronunciations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even pronunciations, right? It's different dialects at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
400 years of freedom changes how do you speak the language. 400 years. When 500? How old? When did the first?
We're
the
not,
first.
I'm going to embarrass myself anymore.
Oh, you don't know the states. You don't know the history of when your nice European genocide started in your continent. God damn it, man! This is embarrassing. Do you at least know any military history?
I'm not going to self-incriminate here.
Damn it! You see now now we can't even give you any
off about C++ if you want. That's fine.
C++. Patton didn't use C++. Bloody Robert E. Lee didn't use C++. It's terrible. Julius Caesar didn't use it. God damn it. How are we going to teach you in coding analogies? Well, we don't know anything about coding, so that's fine. Most of chat does. I'm sure they have good coding analogies. Anyways, no wonder you're such a methodical learner. It's always the bloody coders who are nice and organized. I find you guys. So I think this should be a good little.
You keep holding that opinion about us. I won't correct you.
Well, my friend's making me watch Silicon Valley to get a more realistic view of tech people. So we'll see. I'm not saying you're good at everything. God, like, but definitely learning hotkeys, very very good. So awesome, man. We're way over time, so we're gonna finish up. But I hope that gives you like a good basis for learning from there, as well as like that same sort of roadmap of like, okay, you've got a simple timing attack, and these are all the many things you can learn from that we wrote out for this build order. I hope you can even just customize your own build order and do it a different way. And you know, be like, oh, I want to learn how to use like Oracle or this or that, right? But you still get the same idea of, okay, as long as I have a really decisive attack that I'm heading towards, like anchoring it all, that's the direction we're going for. And then we can maybe map out some little branches, some little reactions here and there, and really focus on your micro as well. So I really like this one because you're always going to get a pretty tight push timing, and you're going to get a chance to force field a lot. I do have a hunch you might kill people so easily the force fields don't matter if you're hitting the timing as tight as you did in that last game. So just keep in mind, try to be very self-critical. Okay, very self-critical of like how you could force field better, imagining they had twice as much stuff, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And is it kind of like trying to find opportunities to still force field, even if I could just A move and win? Is that a valuable thing to do at that point, or just
to a certain extent? It's kind of up to you, really, on that one. But definitely it could be. Okay, so last point is I forgot about the warp prism because we were just kind of focusing on going straight to the push. So if you change that build order and you just kind of mix a prism in, and then you just load those early gateway units in the prism and go and start dropping with it, that will slow you down. Well, it won't really slow things down too much in terms of, because you need a prism anyway before the push happens. But it will be a little bit more messed up in terms of you will have to micro and macro. So you will make more mistakes, but you'll make them make more mistakes. But I think that's good for you at this point. Because
it's like four adepts instead of the three stalkers and drop with the prism kind of idea.
You could totally do the three stalkers because the stalkers are more solid defensive units, and you can still use those to harass as well. So you could just absolutely do that, and that's totally fine. So that could be nice. Obviously, you'd be kind of bare bones on the defense at home, but if you've got an observer out front their base watching, I think we can kind of just go, well, you'll see stuff coming, and you can just defend if you need to with the units, and then maybe warp in just 2 adepts with the warp prism. You know, something like that if you really need to, but we'll kind of see how we go.
Okay, yeah, no, that gives me something to throw in if I find that the timing isn't enough, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
It isn't enough in terms of like giving me enough reps on it.
Yeah, and the thing is like
something to force me to actually have to, you know,
you'll have to adapt to more things. You'll mess the game up. There'll be more variability. More variability is always good in RTS games. More variability is just like better training for the crazy shit that you're going to have to start playing against as you get better, right? Because you're going to play against more and more people throwing spanners in the works, and those are always going to be the hardest things. So if we can throw a spanner in the works preemptively, that can actually be kind of nice. Gets us ready for the chaos, right?
All right.
Awesome, mate. All right, well, good luck in the practice, and I'll catch you next time. Hit me up if you want to set up another session. Otherwise, just drop by Twitch chat, Discord anytime. Let us know how it's going. Always very happy to hear
All right.
hear people progressing.
Good. Thank you very much,
Good night.
man. I appreciate this.
No worries, mate. Have a good night, and I'll catch you later.
You as well. Bye.
Awesome.